Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle, Desrochers, and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who've been a part of our journey for the last 5 years. Thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very much. Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, who is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, and he's the voice you just heard on that intro. So thank you, Justin. We appreciate you so very much. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos of the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre and Halloween, you name it, but does phenomenal commission pieces. So tonight, you guys have asked me about this since I did the replay at Christmas. I've done the replay a couple of times because people love it. So, we deem him to be, of course, a fan favorite, one of our favorites. And we're going to have him revisiting his incredible NDE. People have great NDEs all the time, but this is a really phenomenal NDE, I have to say. So I'm breaking up. I don't know. Damn. How do I look to everybody else? I hope it's okay. Okay, well, let's figure it out. Hopefully it's been going smooth because I had a whole other show I had to do earlier. So I'm hoping that this is going to be all right. My internet seems fine. I am plugged in directly, looking good. So anybody coming into chat, please chime in. Go from there. Peter, hello. How are you? Are we all right?
Hi, Michelle. Your vocal is breaking up quite a bit.
Oh, I wonder if that's from your end.
I don't know if anybody else is hearing that same problem.
Nope. Everybody else said it's good on their end.
It's Skippy. I tried to.
Oh, yeah. Everybody says everything's fine.
YouTube is fine. Someone says it might be. Maybe it's on my end.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe your internet may be a little.
But good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Try to do some signing. I don't know. Yeah, hopefully it'll stabilize. I mean, weather's been pretty unpredictable in a lot of different places.
Maybe it's. Hold on. Let me text my wife and see if she's streaming.
Yeah. All right. Always good. Always good.
Let's see.
By doing that, we'll just check everybody in chat. Hello, Dolly.
Here, I'm going to mute you for a second so I can use voice to text.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello, Contessa. Hello, Janie. Big well wishes to Amelia. She is really getting the pulp kicked out of her with this cold. So hopefully next week, fingers crossed. So hi guys. There we go. Hello. All right, back up. All clear. So
let me try to come back in again. Let me go out and come back in again.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. All right.
I guess.
Okay, there we go. Oh, hopefully he can get this sorted out because it's all fine at my end. No complaining over here. So, NDEs. Hold on. We're back.
Yeah, I'm back.
All right, sound better?
Oh, yeah, it's great. That's what we need to do. Fabulous. Good to see you. Hi, everybody.
I know. I think it was all you. So, no, this is great. I'm so thrilled that you were back. I know Amelia is just like she's so sick right now.
Oh,
I know she's missed a couple weeks. So she's really getting beat up by this cold that's going around. So, but I know she'll be listening in because she just always loved having you on with us, and it's just such a treat because you're just always so delightful to spend a couple of hours with. And big thank you to your wife for sharing you with us for a little while.
well, thanks. She just texted me. I'm not streaming, but I'm off, and it all happens simultaneous. So it's all good. It's all good. She's a good egg, so
Oh,
all's
good.
well.
Fantastic. Well, big thank you to her
I
anyway.
will.
So everyone, of course, like I've played your rerun, a few times because it's just such a great segment, and we have so many more listeners now. We're also on Roku TV, so we have it's the whole other So we thought it would be nice if to just sort of go back to the original, tell us about your experience on all of that. We'll just kind of revisit it, and from that point, maybe just catch us up on what you have going on and such. So.
Okay, I'll make it brief though, okay?
Yeah.
Because it's a long story, as you know.
Oh, no, I know, but a lot of these people haven't heard it.
Okay, so
Wherever
20
you want.
minutes,
Yeah,
whatever.
oh,
All
yeah,
right,
wherever it goes,
we have plenty of
so,
time.
yeah, plenty of time, exactly, so you go, because this is new for a lot of people now.
Well, I'm thanking everybody for being here, and I'd love to have an NDE, says Janie, and I'll tell you, Janie, it's a blessing and a curse. All right, so there's a lot of good stuff that comes with it, but there's a lot of bad stuff that are difficult, not bad, but difficult things that come with it too. And I'll
Yeah,
come back to those. Okay, I promise.
perfect.
So I was 20 years old, and I was an exchange student in Montana from Massachusetts, and I was out west at Montana State University in Bozeman to study, but really to ski and to backpack. And so I got a volunteer's patrol job at the mountain, and I spent, gosh, I think I spent probably 8 weeks total in the mountains backpacking through my entire time there. But come around spring break, I decided that I didn't want to go back home because my sister had vanished when I was 14, and it destroyed my family. And we stayed together, but it was really painful and difficult. And so I just did not want to. I'd had it up to here, and so I was like, I'm not coming home for spring break. And I was looking for an adventure, and so I went to the outdoor club, and I found this guy had this 10-day trip planned. We had 2 weeks off spring break, and to go snow caving, backcountry skiing in March into a wilderness area in British Columbia, then come out for a day, spend a night somewhere, and then go ice climbing for a day
Mm,
on this world famous climb. And I'd never ice climbed. I'd spent a lot of my childhood, Boy Scouts, and right up through college, backpacking all over New England in all different seasons. So I was an experienced winter outdoors person in the wilderness.
mhm,
And I'd been on a lot of rock. I climbed a lot of rock mountains and things, but I'd never done ice. And my guy, Tim, he had just finished his certification in lead ice climbing just that year. So I trust in him. And I borrowed and rented all the equipment that I could for the climb, but I came up short. I didn't have 2 ice axes. I had 1 ice axe, and I came up with an ice hammer. And the hammer is the size of my hand, and the
mm,
axe is maybe 18 inches long. And Tim was reluctant, but I talked him into it because he really wanted to do the climb too.
mhm,
And I wanted to do the climb, but the problem is that the axe, you had this very long reach, and with the hammer, I had a foot or 18 inches less of a reach, so my stride was shorter as I climbed. But also with the axe, you can set it in the ice, and that was me poking it into the bottom of the ice, and you could let go of the handle and dangle on a strap. So you
mm,
could rest your forearm simply by opening your hand. And I know that sounds crazy. You're up, 500 feet and you're dangling in your hand, but your toes are clipped into the ice and your other hand is hanging on. So you kind of rest one at a time. But I couldn't rest one at a time. I could only rest one. I could never
wow.
rest the handle my hand holding the hammer because I couldn't set it in the ice and let go of it. There was no strap for me to dangle from. There was a strap for it to dangle from my wrist, but not one for me to hang on to. And so those two things, my stride and my burning out of my forearm, slowed our climb significantly. And by the time we reached the top of the climb, 500 or 600 feet up, all the other teams that had been on this world famous climb that day had descended and had left, except for the last team. And they were walking out with their arms raised up like, what are you guys, crazy? What are you doing up there? But you can't, ice climbing is not like backpacking. You go up the trail and you get tired, you come back down the same trail again. You can't do that ice climbing. You have to follow the route with the rope and traverse to get to the rappel, because you can't really go down on a climb. So we had to continue up. Halfway up the climb, we knew that we were in serious trouble. And there's 10 feet of snow on the ground, and in Fahrenheit it was freezing. And we got to the top of the climb, and immediately as the sun went down, the temperature dropped about 30 degrees. And now we're 500 or 600 feet up, sitting on this ledge the size of a boardroom table, and above us is 10,000 feet of mountain. So we're not really that high up, but we're on a sheer cliff. So our legs are dangling over the edge. We know that we're in serious trouble. Almost immediately, violent shivers erupted all over my body. I was wearing clothes I had long underwear on, and a wool shirt and a wool sweater and a shell. And I was dressed for action. I was warm enough during the day, action in that temperature. But as soon as I stopped, all the sweat and ice had been falling down my back, so my back was wet. And I just got radically cold instantaneously, and so did Tim. And we had these shivers. This is the onset of our hypothermia, of a very long, traumatic, death-defying night, where all of my muscles individually, all of the micro muscles in my body were pulsating independently from every other one. So my whole body was like this huge, 1,000, a million different twitches. My jaw was clattering. It made it really difficult to talk. And I hauled up the rope. And as I hauled up the rope, pardon me, Tim hauled up the rope. And as he hauled up the rope too fast, he didn't lay it correctly. And we ended up with this big knot that I then had to untie over an hour or two as we sat there discussing our deaths, because we knew that we were in serious trouble. We couldn't go down. We didn't have any sleeping bags or extra food or a stove or something, because nobody did. It was a day climb. And we discussed canoodling up against the mountain together to keep our warmth, but we didn't have any warmth. We were already cold. So as I untied the rope, we realized that we were going to die. And I say this sort of, offhandedly, oh, I thought we were going to die. But every time I told this story until 2016, when I went back to the same place and recalled my soul, I cried. And so you're getting the kind of the post, the healed story rather than the trauma end of it. We were gonna die. We knew it. And I was on the ski patrol, so I knew hypothermia. We had a 50-degree below zero day on the mountain. This is Bridger Bowl. One day it was 50 below, and I was on patrol, and we had this refresher that morning, and this is like a month or two before, had a refresher that morning on hypothermia and frostbite. So I was like up on it, and I knew that we were gonna be in serious, serious trouble. So I'm gonna kind of cut out most of the trauma of the night. It was the most traumatic night of my life. We had to fight our way across the mountain. It's a drop off, hundreds of feet in the dark, on the ice, roped to each other, as cold was eating away at our reason. Cold steals your brain. It steals your coordination. It contributed to bad decisions. And we fought and fought and fought all the way across the mountain, all through the night. As the cold got deeper and deeper. So we didn't have any new energy. I was a skinny mini 20-year-old with no extra fuel on my body. And so when I ran out of fuel, my body started to eat itself a little bit. Ketosis started. And I was knowing that my energy level was dropping as the cold was increasing, as I had to keep moving, using up the remaining energy in order to stay warm. So we had this pressures against us. And we reached this point as we get to the second to last rappel, as we got over to this spot, it was a dark, craggy, off the ice, on the rock, shadowed space, and I felt my body go from willpower. I was holding my trauma, holding my fear, holding all of this at arm's length, because if you panic in the wilderness, you definitely die. This is it, and so
Yeah.
Tim didn't panic, I didn't panic, but it was
Mhm.
this strong act of willpower. And
Mhm.
I climbing itself creates that willpower, because you
Mhm.
have to be able to be 100% focused on exactly where you are and exactly
Mm.
what you're doing. Any wandering mind is dangerous. And
Yes.
so we're both focused in and hypered in, and then this thing happened to my body. My it was like my deep mammalian mind from a million years ago sort
Mm.
of took over my brain and my body, and I went into this instinctual drive for survival. I don't know how to describe it to you, but I never
Mm.
I felt my ancient self, my ancient heritage
Mhm.
come into my body. And so at this point, I wasn't really driving myself forward anymore. So we make this rappel down, we get to this other ledge. We're now about 100, 150 feet up from the bottom.
Mm.
And in the mountain at this spot, this is where they practiced rappelling. So there were iron pins epoxied into the mountain with rings, carabiners, and straps. And Tim was harnessed, strapped to my left, and I was to his right. He came down first, and we're standing on this ledge where we can see the car. The car is across the Ice Fields Parkway in the parking lot,
Wow.
and the moon is up, and we can kind of see, and we can hear the Saskatchewan River, and and we are freezing. My feet had gone from cold to fire to no feeling.
Mm.
My fingers, my hands, still have all my digits, but I have frostbite all over me. And my hands were blistered, and so I took the rope, I took off my gloves, my mittens, and I tied the one end harness to my one end of the rope to my harness. I took the other end and I tossed it out around this corner that we had come around up to this rappel, and I tossed it out around, and I pulled down the rope, and I pulled the rope a couple inches, 6 inches maybe,
Mm.
and it jammed somewhere up above between something. It just and the more I pulled it, the tighter the jam got. And I tried flicking this line, making an S curve, a sine curve in the wave in the line, but the rope was laying against the edge of the mountain,
Mhm.
and I couldn't get the flip to go past that edge, and it was
Mm.
out beyond where I could reach.
Mhm.
So I kept trying to pull this thing and trying to flip this thing, and
Mhm.
and I just was failing, and as I was doing this, I had this heat rush into my core. So I felt like all of the blood from my feet and my hands and my arms and my legs kind of rushed into my heart and into my lungs and into my brain. And I remember thinking, "Oh, I don't need my feet or my hands. I'm glad
Mm.
I have the warmth in my core." But then I started to sweat, and so I unzipped my parka,
Oh
my
boy.
my shell. And this is a really common thing in hypothermic people. They take off their
Mm.
clothes. Why do they
Yeah.
take off their clothes? Because the
Mhm.
body is telling you that it's hot when it's not. And so I
Mhm.
unzipped my coat, and Tim, who'd been in his own world over there, he saw me do that, and he yelled at me, "Zip up your coat." And I was like, "F you, I'm not zipping up my coat, I'm hot." And
Yeah.
I kept pulling on the rope, and then came the first time I fell asleep, and I fell asleep like a drop
Mm.
curtain, kabam! I was out, I was exhausted, smacked my head, had a helmet, my shoulder on the rock, and woke back up and stood back up, and then I had this realization that I wasn't gonna get out of this alive. And as I
Mm.
realized that I was gonna die where I was, because now I know I'm in the advanced stages of hypothermia, even though I didn't wanna zip up my coat. I still know
Mhm.
what's going on.
Mhm.
And and this peace settled over me. And as this peace settled over me, I started listening to the river. I started looking at the stars. There's a bazillion stars in the sky of every color and size, and there's so many of them. And looking at the mountain away, and this peace settled on me. And I started thinking about my mom and my dad and my sister and God. And I just accepted my death.
Mm.
And I fell asleep, and I woke up, and I fell asleep, and then I woke up, and I stand up, and I pull on the rope, and as I'm pulling on the rope, my peripheral vision is like this big black circle around this ever shrinking vision that I had capacity, and it got smaller and smaller. I'm looking around. I'm like, what is going on here? And as it begins to go to black, I thought to myself, I must be falling asleep again.
Mm.
And then when it went to black, I woke up. Suddenly it goes to black, and instead of unconsciousness, I come to
Mhm.
consciousness. I am out of my body, sort of in front of my body, and in front of me, where the mountain is supposed to be, is this huge, expansive black velvet depth. And it wasn't scary. I was confused. I didn't know what was going on, but I was uh, not sure.
Mhm.
And so I'm kind of trying to figure out what's happening, and then way far in the distance, in this black velvet distance, a single light appears, like a little pinprick of a star,
Mm.
and it appears, and then almost instantaneously it rushes toward me across this vast distance and increases in size. And as it comes toward me, it telepathically communicates to me without language that I'm going with it. It's taking me, it's capturing me, it's receiving me. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I don't know what's going on. So I grab my willpower and I try to make a shield of my willpower, and it just reaches through it like I'm made out of pudding and
Hmm.
grabs me right out of it, and then enfolds me in itself. And now I am this, I'm in this orb, this consciousness that is, and I'm traveling instantaneously. I'm traveling with it back up the way it came, and I felt the severing from my body, and I'm in this thing, and I'm immobilized, but it's transparent and it's gigantic, and it's speaking to me, but not in language. It's speaking love, and it's speaking comfort, and it's
Mhm.
speaking welcome to me. And I was in contentment. And
Mhm.
I could see my body, and my body had a humanoid shape to it, but there were no molecules. I was made of, this is all metaphor. I was made of photons of light. And
Mhm.
I was a light being, and I could see out through this intelligence, this angel, and it was all darkness. But I had these two perspectives. I was also simultaneously the eye of God outside, at some distance, seeing me inside this angelic orb. And
Mhm.
so I have these two perspectives. And when I looked over, I couldn't see the eye that was looking. I could see me looking at it, but I couldn't see the eye. And I could see this all inside of me. And I knew that this angelic being, this orb of consciousness, which was mighty, almighty, it was superpositioned also. It was sort of a reduction of this much l- larger, infinite voice that was speaking through it, sort of like a megaphone.
Mm.
Um, and it carried me, and is speaking comfort to me, and it carries me up to this edge where it had popped into my view. And then I'm not really sure what happened. I popped out of it, or it unfolded, but
Mm.
suddenly I was in a universe, our universe size, 70, what is it, 70 billion light years. I
Mhm.
was in this universe size emptiness by myself,
Mm.
and I was an orb of consciousness. And I was, all of my thinking was my being.
Mm.
And I had no physicality at all. I was in nothingness,
Mm.
an illuminated darkness, and I was energy, and I knew the trueness of myself. I understood that this is my original self. This is always who I'd been. I'd always been this. I'd never been really a human. I lived in a human, but
Right.
this was me. And I
Mhm.
was 1,000% content, alone in this darkness, knowing myself. And I could
Mhm.
see in every direction at once. And at the far edge of this universe-sized space I was in, was a
Mhm.
deep darkness that I could not see inside of. I could see everything else, but there was an edge to it, and this edge wasn't like a hard edge, it was like a deep edge.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
as I looked around, the edge opened, and this light poured through, and it was, it's brilliantly bright white light, made of a zillion electromagnetic colors, infrared, ultraviolet, all the colors of the rainbow, and so much more. And it was all of these individual colors and the white light at the same time. And it was the most beautiful, seductive, desirous that I'd ever experienced. And in the moment of my deciding that I wanted to be with it, I traveled to it and it traveled to me instantaneously. And I was then in front of it, next to it, and it was pouring out a radiance of all power, of all creation, of all life itself. And I wanted it. And so I touched it with my orb, and as my orb self, and as I touched it, it pulled me into itself, it surrounded me, and it opened me and filled inside of me. And so now I'm inside of it, and it's inside of me, and I see in front of me. I have a two-part life review. The first part is I see in front of me a gigantic eyeball like the size of the sun, and I'm an asteroid, and it's looking at me, pouring out light, so much light, but it doesn't hurt me. It fills me, and I am the light inside of me, and it speaks to me, and it tells me that it had always loved me. It had always been with me through everything I had done, and its illumination was my life. And so I was like 99.9% light, but there were these dark parts of me, these deep, dark parts of me that I were made of my shame. The things I had, I tried to hide. I coalesced them, and I tried to hide them, and they were small, like a thumb size of my body comparison. And as soon as I tried to hide them, they were visible. But as soon as I tried to hide them, I entered into them. And I sort of shrunk down inside of all of this darkness, which was my darkness, a darkness I had created. And so I went through this hell of my own making, where I experienced every single person's pain that I ever gave away in my entire life in a chronological sequence from their insides. Their emotional reactions, their psychological reactions, their physical reactions, their thoughts. I was in them, and I was two places at once. I was also myself, my human self, inside my human self, experiencing all of my thoughts and emotions for causing this pain. And I knew that I was causing this pain. And I felt the pain from the other side. And the pain that I felt from the other side was 10 times bigger than the pain that I thought that I was giving them from my side. And as I was giving them this pain, all of their pain accrued to me. It was my karma, my sins, whatever you want to call this. This darkness that I had created was my darkness. And meanwhile, as I'm going through this, I still, the voice without sound is still speaking to me, and it's giving me love, 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 welcome, mercy, and showing me its unlimited, unmanifested nature, its immensity. And in its immensity is purity of love. And I measured my dark side against this immensity, and I saw my smallness. I became my own smallness. And as I'm in my own suffering that I had created, judging myself, all of the love that I had, so I carried with me all the bad things that I had done. But I also carried all the love that had been given to me in my life, and all the love I had given away in my life. And it became like a tuning knob. I got to tune more closely into the frequency of the voice speaking to me. And as I listened to the love inside me, I turned, metaphorically, I turned to the light, and all of my pain went away. All of those things, they didn't like get stored away in some vault somewhere. They became no thing. As if they never existed. I left that, and I entered into wholeness, healing, welcome, belovedness, beauty, joy, paradise, understanding, knowledge, awe, and it was truth, charity, and it was all one thing. All these aspects, they were all one thing, and it inflated me. and I kept inflating with this unlimited energy that was pouring into me, that was the light itself. And I got to the size where I felt like any more of it, I would stretch beyond my capacity to exist in this
Mhm.
form, the form I was in. And when I reached this edge, I was suddenly shrunken into like a singular photon.
Mhm.
And I was this singular photon, but I was this pure light.
Mhm.
And in front of me, in a field that a depth of field and breadth and height that was infinite, were all these other bazillions of little photon lights, and they
Mhm.
were all entangled with each other. And it was the many and the one, the oneness that is all things, that was one thing. And
Mhm.
I'm part of this thing. And as I'm in this ecstasy of union, I see below me out, so my back is sort of to this dark universe, so I'm kind of on
Mhm.
the edge of this light. and
Mhm.
and and so in the darkness, out of the deep darkness, the wall through which I cannot see, this tunnel opens, and this tunnel is my soul. When I was created eons and eons and eons ago, as
Mhm.
as an incarnatable soul, and it's
Mhm.
emanating out, and it has this long experience when it was no thing, and then it extended out such a distance that inside of it were all these many, 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 many lives I had lived,
Mhm.
incarnated into other bodies, and they were all in this order, but they were all chronological, like they had been or are in time, but they were also all happening at the same time. Each I was alive in every one of them at the same
Hmm.
time. And
Hmm.
and as I looked, I thought, "I'd love to see inside." And so I was swept down into 2 of these lives. I went into this one life somewhere toward the beginning, like mid-beginning, and it popped into this man's body. And so I'm in this man's body, and I'm walking on a street, and I've got sandals on, and I got long toenails, and I got hairy legs, and I got a toga thing on, and there are palm trees and little houses and dust, and I can hear this language being spoken that I understand, but I can't tell you what it was.
Mhm.
And I'm in a group of guys, and it's like a commercial street between cities, maybe, or I'm
Mhm.
not sure. There were, donkey carts and people selling things, not super crowded, but
Mhm.
but there were travelers moving past each other. And I'm with this group of guys, maybe, I don't know how many, maybe 10, and they're kind of behind me, and they're all dressed kind of, because I look over my shoulder, I see them, and we have black beards and curly
Mhm.
hair, and we kind of look, as I look at it in my memory, we're
Mhm.
kind of Middle Eastern,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
and we're walking down this road, and they're having a spiritual conversation that I'm part of, and they
Mhm.
ask me a question, and as I turn to answer the question, I'm pulled back out, and I'm pulled back out, and I'm kind of looped around to closer to my very beginning, when I get popped into this tiny little creature. And I know I've got 4 legs, I got a tail, I'm looking through eyes at a world that I don't recognize, because it is, I don't know where I am. I can't tell what's going on. I can't
Mhm.
tell what things are. There's all these different colors and shapes, but I know I'm scared, and I know that
Mhm.
I'm staying perfectly still in a shadow of something small, and I'm trying to avoid being eaten by a predator, and I get pulled back out again. And so
Oh.
I'm in this state now, and I can see all of these lives. I can even see to the end, the life I had just left, and that kind of brings me back to memory of my mom and my dad. And so I say I'm now out of the photonic state, and I'm sort of in a conversation with the voice that's in me and around me, and I say without language, "Am I dead?" And the voice says, "Yes, you're dead." And I say, "Well, what about my parents?" And I'm swept across this infinite void, and I get up to this edge of this of the darkness, and I get penetrated through the darkness. It's like an energy field, and on the other side of the energy field, sort of like if I had a head, my head would
Mhm.
be sticking out, and the rest of me was still inside of
No.
this, and I'm gigantic now inside of this thing,
Mhm.
and and I can see our universe. I'm looking at our live, like a live feed from the James Webb Telescope of our
Mhm.
universe. And I can see all these galaxies and these stars, and I'm in this deep. There's a lot of dark space between me and the nearest stars, and my attention is kind of drawn in one direction, and I see the edge of the beginning of the universe, and
Mhm.
then I see this light that's being poured into it. I see that the light is being poured out of this infinite unknowable darkness. The light is created by this darkness
Mhm.
and pours itself out and infuses into all everything, quarks, electrons, molecules. It creates and infuses itself into this web of all matter. And I can see that inside of every single star galaxy, everything I can see, even the dark space in between,
Mhm.
everything is made of this same light. And
Mhm.
as I see this incredible universal expanse of and the connection to the origin of life itself, all life and light, making this exist, all of this light that's inside of this universe is love. And all of that love is aimed at me. And then all of the love of the light is aimed at me, and the love of the darkness is aimed at me. And out of the darkness, all these other universes are popping. So it's like universe after universe after universe. And
Mhm.
all of this love, this immense love, is all like focused right on me. And I am in this, I can't even tell you. It was so intense and permanent that my entire life subsequently, when I came back, is 100% oriented and has been from the moment I came back toward the oneness of love, the oneness of being. I was infused with infinite love, unconditional, infinite love, and I felt like I was the most special being that ever was created, and I was known through and through. And as I'm experiencing this immense love, my attention is then brought to our solar system, to our Earth in live time, and I can see Earth, and it's like a hologram, and I can see through Earth, and I can see every single human being, billions and billions and billions of people, and they're
Mhm.
sleeping, and they're warring, and they're making love, and they're swimming, and they're having dinner, and I can see everybody doing everything in live time, and inside of every single human being is this golden tiny speck of light, and it's so bright that I can see the light, and it makes all of the human beings look like shadows in
Mm.
comparison. And all around the earth is this huge fog. And I can see that none of them see what I'm seeing in each other. Nobody can see this brilliant light that's inside of all of them.
Mhm.
And as I see this same immense unconditional love that was inside of me is now inside of everybody. So I felt like it was this unique and personal, only me. I'm the
Mhm.
most beloved, but the
Mhm.
same only me, most beloved is equally distributed to every single person. And creature, and as I saw this love told me it folds back in on itself and that nothing is ever lost to itself because it loves itself in all its forms, which
Mm.
is why I was, no matter what I did in my life,
Mhm.
I was loved always,
Mhm.
unconditionally. I'm the one who set up the barrier, which is a lesson that came back with me.
Mm.
And so I have this I see the love and light inside of everyone. I want to see it up close. So I ask, can I see it up close? I zoom down to earth to the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. There is a Navy ship on the ocean, and
Mm.
I zoom inside the ship to the captain's quarters, and inside the captain is this very same light. And then
Mhm.
I follow him. He goes through the ship and he goes up to the watch, to the helm, and I see it in everybody, and nobody
Mhm.
can see it. And I'm pulled back out again. And then I see my parents' faces, mom and dad, and then there's another set of parents' faces, my mom and dad twice. And in the first set, I see their life without me. I see their entire life with me dead. And I see also the ending of their life, which is the same as mine in this
Mm.
paradox. And
Mhm.
then I see mom and dad with me. and I see the length of their life and the same return to the very place that I was in. And
Mhm.
in the first set where I don't go back, it's like nuclear bombs go off in my mom's psychological well-being and emotional well-being. The whole thing shatters. The family is destroyed. And
Mhm.
in the other one, when I go back, if I go back, there's still tons of suffering, but it's not like that.
Mhm.
And so I say, I see the problem and I say, well, can I go back? And the
Mhm.
voice says, yeah, you can go back. This is your time for here, but you can go back if you want. You have a choice. And
Mhm.
I say, well, if I go back, can I come back here? And the voice says, of course you come back here. You could come back here if you go back
Mhm.
now. And I
Mhm.
say, well, then I choose to live my life. And it says, you won't live your life. Oh, and I should add this too. No gender, no religion, no culture, no
Mhm.
society. This is so far beyond all of these conceptualizations that we have. They were
Mhm.
all shattered. They don't exist.
Mhm.
Only this infinite love. And even the language that I'm using to describe this, it's
Mhm.
not even a bazillionth close enough.
Wow.
And so I say, I choose to live my life. It says, you won't live your life, and it throws me out. And as I go, I'm re-encased in itself, okay? In an
Mhm.
aspect of itself. This angelic being is an entity of itself, and it's sending me out, and I go through the darkness, and I'm in the space in between, and as I'm traveling the space in between, I look back. I'm like, what's going on? And I look back and I see the wall of darkness, and
Mhm.
out of the wall of darkness comes this huge beam of light, this huge like laser beam that's gigantic, and
Mhm.
it's and it and I kind of I look at it, and it goes by me, and I look ahead, and it spreads itself out from brilliant brightness to fading to nothing. And inside of this like imagine a a sunflower with a
Mhm.
thousand seeds in this, and that the circle that it makes,
Mhm.
and in the center of it is this light, and all of them are all the seeds are doorways. And the voice says to me, choose light, choose a life. And
Mhm.
I know it wants me just to choose the light. I know it does. But
Mhm.
I think to myself, I'm going back to earth. And I already know that I'm going to be a messenger. It's like, you're going to have to tell people about this.
Mhm.
And I think to myself, well, who's going to be able to listen to me? And I thought, well, I want, if I'm made of only light, how are people going to relate to me? And
Mhm.
I think, I think of all these things that I want. I wanted this and I wanted that and wanted the other thing. And in an instant, a door opens. It's not in the beam itself. It's off to the side, but it's not out at the far edge. It's somewhere close, but not not in it. And I go in this doorway, and I'm still being carried down this tunnel really fast. And on the sides of this tunnel, like a tube, are all these portals, all these openings that have hatches on them, like a sailboat, and or doorways. And as I go zooming by them, I see that they all lead to all these other tunnels. They lead to
Mhm.
all these other doorways, and that this is a probability field that I'm in. I'm in a probability field. I've chosen a single life, but I'm still in this probability field of choices. And
Mhm.
so I get to the end of this tunnel, and now this angelic being has a little more shape to it. It's not so huge anymore. I'm outside of it. I'm sort of um, holding. It's got me, but it reaches in, and stabs this body that's on the cliff. And I see this body, I see this other body. I don't know who they are. I don't know what they are. I can see their shapes. One's lying on its back and the other one's
Mhm.
crouched over, and I'm really up close, and it stabs itself like a sword into the chest of one of these bodies. And I'm very I have no idea who this thing is, what this thing is. And
Mhm.
it opens it up, and then it takes me and it shoves me inside, like crushes me down like
It's
an
a hard
aluminum.
landing.
It was, oh my God, it was like, and it shoves me inside this thing, and now I feel like I'm in an esophagus, those things in the torture chambers with the spikes on the inside. I'm
Oh,
like, oh,
nice.
this feels
Yeah.
like I'm like trapped inside of this thing,
Mhm.
and I can see the angelic being, I can see back to heaven, and then the hole closes. And as the hole closes, I'm like, what? I'm in this much reduced state. I'm wondering why I made the choice that I made. I don't understand what's going on. And and my brain, I feel the brain of the body come on, like it turns on and kind of winds up, and then hearing comes, and I'm hearing screaming and crying, but it doesn't really make any sense to me. And I open my eyes, and there's Tim, and he's crying, and he's screaming, and he's yelling, and he's got me kind of shaking me, and screaming, "Don't die! Don't die! Don't die! Don't die! Don't die!" And he sees my eyes open, and he's like, "Oh my God, you're not dead! You're not dead! You're not dead! You're not dead!" And he's crying, and he's screaming, and he's yelling, and he pulls me up, and I have no idea who he is, where we are, or what I am. And so
Mhm.
he's talking and talking and talking. And I had this period of time where I didn't know what was going on.
Mhm.
And then slowly I started to remember. And then he told me to pull the rope. And I pulled the rope, and it came free, and we descended. We went to the car. We got the tent. We set it up, and we self-treated for hypothermia until we got warm enough. Then we got in the car, and we turned on the heaters.
Mhm.
And I came back an entirely different person. And everything around me, my first impression of the world was that it was celluloid thin
Mhm.
and celluloid fragile,
Yes.
uh, superficial, and it was all projecting light through the cellulose. There was light everywhere in everything. The
Mhm.
whole thing was, it was like I was on another planet, and I had just, encountered pink skies and orange oceans and Balboa trees.
Mhm.
I was like, what is this? And so I was very disconcerted in my emotions, and I could feel Tim. I could feel him in a way I could never feel him before.
Mhm.
And uh, people ask me why I didn't talk to him about it, because he was an atheist and I was not. And I knew that religion was off the table. And besides, I had no idea how to talk about what happened to me. It
Mhm.
took me decades to figure out how to language this experience.
Mhm.
So that's what happens. And
Mhm.
we hope that wasn't too long, Michelle. Hope that was
Oh,
okay.
it's never too long. I mean, we have people listening to this for the first time. I could listen to it like a few times. So, um, Kaysen is asking you, would you say there's no external judgment, but the judgment is totally internal?
Mine was 100% for me. I don't know,
Yeah.
can't say for anybody else, but I
Right.
was not judged at all. I was only loved.
And
But
judging yourself, I
I
guess.
judged myself, and I judged
Right.
myself because I could see the comparison of my not love to
Mhm.
infinite love. And there's another thing I left out, and that is, during that experience, I not only felt my not being loving compared to infinite love,
Mhm.
I saw all of humanity and
Mhm.
all of us as equally less than. So there's
Mhm.
this infinite distance, even though it was right close to me,
Mhm.
infinite size difference between me and the divine, and on this level, all humanity was on this level,
Mhm.
and we were all the same, and we didn't make the system. So
Mhm.
I knew that, and I understood. I was told that it wasn't my fault that I was the way I was, because I didn't design the system in the first place.
Mhm.
I was just a cog in the wheel, but I was
Mhm.
beloved as well. And
Mhm.
so I had this radical equality of all humanity instilled inside of me, and not just humanity, but birds and bees and butterflies and trees and,
Mhm.
all sorts of
Essences.
stuff.
Yeah. Just essence, like the whole law of one. We are one, right? Just we all come back around full circle to one another. There's everything is connected. So, what was life like for Peter coming back to mom and dad and to mundane? I always say mundane life because it's kind of hard to beat that experience. But we get into this rut of life, working and just this everyday responsibilities and so on. What was it like?
Well, uh, immediately it was one thing, and midway it was another thing, and now it's something else. And so
Yeah.
immediately, we had a lot of problems getting back to Montana.
Hmm.
And one of the things that we did is we stopped to have pizza,
Hmm.
and just the weirdness. When I was dead, I didn't need to fuel myself. I was fuel.
Hmm.
I didn't need an external energy source. I didn't need to move. I didn't need to eat. I was all I had everything I needed
Hmm.
always. And so
Hmm.
I had to, like, it was really kind of gross and disgusting to me that I had to eat. And so I had to chew this thing and swallow it, and it was just very crude. And then I got back to Montana State, and I kept this a secret for 20 years, just so that you know. And I went on a theater tour for 3 months. So almost immediately, I left the university and this traveling theater company from the university. We traveled all over the United States. We had a 15-passenger van, a pickup truck, and a trailer. And we had a terrible car wreck on the way home. I didn't even tell you about that. Terrible, totaled the car. And I got a stutter out of it. And so I ended up with a stutter. And I told the theater director, but this is a sign language theater. So it was all in silent anyway. So it didn't matter that I had a stutter. And so I sat in the back of I refused to drive the vehicles, although I had promised I would. And I sat in the back of the pickup truck for 24,000 miles by myself. Once in a while, someone would sit out there with me. I sat out there in my sleeping bag, all over the United States, because I needed to be alone and meditate. I dove inside myself and tried to figure out what had happened to me. And I performed at night, I came back with this extra compassion. So by the time I got back home, that was that summer, I had to hitchhike back to Boston from Montana. That's another story. So I hitchhike all the way back to Boston, and I'm supposed to go to graduate school in architecture in the family to go to the family business. And in midsummer, my dad sends me out on this job to look over this meadow and this woodland for a mall that he wants to bid on as a designer. And I'm in the middle of this meadow, and I take off my shoes, and the butterflies are flying around me, and the birds are going past me, and the blueberries are speaking to me, and the trees are whispering, and I'm like, oh my God, this place is alive. I can't kill this place. And so I went home and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm not going in architecture. I can't do it. I'm done. And they knew about the ice climb, and they knew that we got stuck, but I didn't tell them anything about what happened about the near-death experience. And so 30 years later, more than that, 40 years later, I asked my dad before he died a few years ago. I said, so Dad, do you remember that summer I came back? Was there anything different about me? And he said, well, Peter, your mother and I had talked, and you were, not that you weren't before, my mother cuts in, not that you weren't before, but you were more compassionate and kinder in a way we didn't understand. You were like a different person. And I couldn't go to concerts anymore. I couldn't be around large crowds because it was like I was instantaneously psychic, but I wasn't reading people's thoughts. I was experiencing their emotions. I couldn't tell where they ended and I began. It was so overwhelming. It made me withdraw and withdraw and withdraw, and drove me deeper and deeper and deeper into my interior self. And so after I graduated a semester late from UMass, I was going to be going to architecture school, and my parents talked me into applying to Georgia Tech, which I got into. My sister had just graduated from there. And but I needed something different, and I started looking at the monastery. Went to Catholic high school near this monastery, learned centering prayer from them back in the 70s. And so I go to this monastery, and I start going there, and I realize these monks glow. Like, everybody has an aura to them, but these monks are like beacons of light to me. And so I'm like, oh my God, these guys, they know what I know. And so I began this relationship with them, and I decided that before I entered the monastery, because I really liked sex, and I like life without sex. What's that gonna be? I decided it's like, so I applied to Harvard, Yale, and Princeton divinity schools, and I got into 2 out of 3, and I went to Yale. And I asked the dean of students if I could do an independent study in mysticism, and without her ever asking me why. And I got to tell you, this woman, she's like 94, lives in California. We are still friends. I call her every couple of months. She's still got all her marbles. She's great. Can't see well anymore, but she changed my life. She let me do this 3-year independent study, found money to hire a professor for me from outside the university, so I could study mysticism. And what I was doing, and I kept this a secret, I was trying to find if there are other people in the world like me. And if there was, how did they think about it? How did they talk about it? and what tools did they use to go back? Because from the moment I came back, I regretted my arrival here. All I wanted to do was go back. And
Mm.
I prayed every day to die. Take me today. Take me today. Take me today. I don't want to be here anymore. And meanwhile, I learned Kriya Yoga and Hatha Yoga and combined them with my centering prayer and dove, because I read the Yoga Sutras and Paramahansa Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, and a bunch of other stuff. I read very widely, East and West, almost immediately, and studied that in grad school. And I found that the only place that I had any solace at all, any stability or balance in my life, was in my interior world. And the interior world wasn't a world of imagination for me. I decided to utilize the tools that I found in the Yoga Sutras, that I would begin a practice of breath and mental focus to sidestep my own egoic self. Because I realized that the only thing in my way between me and the divine was my egoic self, was my own mind. And so through all of this process, up until today, I'm still doing this. I became at the divinity school. So this is Yale Divinity School. It's a very intellectual place. I'm walking around with bare feet. I got a ponytail. I'm standing on my head in the library. I got kicked out of the library for a week for standing on my head in the library. And
So you're the free spirit.
I was the freaky free spirit for sure. And I'm studying mysticism. They're all like, what's with this guy? And, so people knew I was different.
Yes. Yes. But it sounds like it was a good different, I think when you go through an experience like that, Kazan had made a very interesting comment. He says, usually when somebody goes through this kind of experience, their whole belief system gets shattered. But, how did that work for you? I mean, you come back with this renewed sort of faith, but everything, like for me, I would think going through something like that and coming back to this life thinking, knowing, being so much more enlightened, thinking, how did I not so much waste your life? Life is never waste, but how did I get through all of this the way it was when it could have been like this?
That second part never crossed my mind, never, because I knew that I never was this. I still know that I'm not. Every time I know from the moment that I came back that I inhabit this body. I know that it's like I'm like software in a machine, and most of me is up in the cloud somewhere. I'm like an app in this biological machine,
An avatar.
so like an avatar, right? Exactly. And
Yeah.
as for what was the first part? You were
Oh, your spirituality, your faith,
oh yes,
everything,
oh yeah,
your
all that
belief
was gone.
system
I had no
gets
belief system. It was totally. I didn't believe in anything. I didn't even believe in language. Part of my training is in linguistics. I love linguistics. I love language because language is totally a construct. It doesn't exist. It's like the only every single word that has a definition is balanced against other words that have definitions, and it's like this fragile structure that everybody thinks in the mind that's reality. That the words we give to things are real, but they're not. They are encapsulations of concepts, and the concepts themselves are part of the mind. The entire structure isn't real for me. Culture, society, religion, language, myself, my identity. I came back and none of that was real. All of my religion was gone.
It feels I was a guest host, or I was a guest on a show earlier talking about the Matrix. You feel like it's some sort of a simulation, like, because you're just so aware of everything. You're on the outside looking in, and you come back and you're just sort of going through these motions of it would be so hard. That would be really hard.
I felt like Neo, in the Matrix. Okay, but it's not an evil overlord. Okay, it's not. It is. And when people hear simulation, it's always this negative thing, maybe because of those movies, which are great movies. But it is sort of like that. And I know myself. I know my own eternal nature. I know where I'm from. I know where I'm going. I have no fear of death. The second time I died was a great day in my life. I
Yeah.
was smiling the whole time, and they're all like, "Oh my god, he's
Yeah.
dying."
No.
I'm like, "It's okay." Um, so
We'll get to that too.
I had no faith. Yeah, we'll come to that. I had
Yeah.
no faith. I went
Right.
so I go to the divinity school. I get
Mhm.
ordained in the United Church of Christ. I lied during my
Mhm.
ecclesiastical council. I said I was a believer, and I am not a believer. I think okay, so let me talk about Jesus for a second. I think he's
Mhm.
completely misunderstood. I think that he was, like
Yeah.
me. When I came back and I read the Gospels through the lens of my near-death experience, because 'cause I'd
Mhm.
read them in high school, I went to Catholic school.
Mhm.
Jesus was like me, and like, my burden is light. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, it is light. It's light itself. Make your eye single and your body will be filled with light." I'm like, "Oh, I know the single eye. I am made of light." So he's talking about all these things that I know. So I go into church life as a
Mhm.
disguise because I'm still not talking about it. So I hid inside the church
Mhm.
as because I had this love of the same dean talked me into it. I was going to go to get my doctoral degree, but she talked
Mhm.
me into going to the church. We got pregnant and had a baby, and I couldn't leave. A long story, and
Mhm.
so I lived a life of service hiding inside of the church. And
Mhm.
so although I was I'm still ordained technically,
Mhm.
but I never called myself reverend the entire time I was a minister. Other people
Mhm.
did. I never did.
Mhm.
And I have ex-reverend now because I want to make sure that people know that I came out of that thing.
Mhm.
Um, and so I ran the church. I ran the church. I was an employee of the church with a certain latitude where I could break the rules of the church and reach out to the outside community. And so I
Mhm.
turned to the churches because I was working in communities that had some resources. I redirected those resources to helping the most needy among us, food
Mhm.
pantries, homeless shelters,
Mhm.
domestic violence, all sorts of stuff. Um,
Mhm.
so you might think I was a believer, but I never was.
Mhm. I get that sometimes, like I said, just going through the motions because you're conditioned and you think it's the thing to do. A couple of comments before I get back to Kazan. Carol Ann, if words don't exist, why do they hold so much power?
Oh, they totally exist. They're just not real. They're
Ah,
they're
Matrix, Carol
yeah,
Ann.
yeah, well, they totally exist. I mean,
Right,
it's my
right.
experience of this world is that I
Mhm,
mean, I stub my toe and it hurts. It's
mhm,
real enough, but it's lowercase r compared to uppercase R of the
mhm,
reality of which is really real.
mhm,
And so, yeah, words are well, because we have words,
mhm,
that's the reason why human beings are different than, say, because we have words and opposable thumbs,
mhm,
and our brain, as it developed all these folds in on itself, and so it's
mhm,
a very large package in a very small space.
mhm,
We were able to pass knowledge on to the next generation. And
mhm.
we know that the dolphins do this because there's
Yes.
this, and we know that monkeys do this. So we're not the only ones who do this,
Mhm,
but language gives us the capacity to pass on knowledge and technology. And so in a physical sense, language creates the culture and the world that we're in, makes the
mhm,
microphone possible.
mhm,
Um, but in the real reality of the divine, there are no words. Everything was instantaneous.
mhm.
There was no
It's a
language.
thought, it's just a
It's very
thought.
lower level. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a thought, and it's just there, manifestation, just a thought, you know? Very interesting. Kazan, you're on a roll tonight, Kazan. Peter, what do you say God is?
So it's so many things and no thing at all. And I love the 99 names of God in Islam. That's a
Mhm,
if you want to take a quick look at the of aspects of God. So it's like the divine God is love. I landed on the word love because
mhm,
it's most appropriate, but it's not human love. Human love
mhm,
is part of it. You
mhm,
love your cat, that's a part of it. Um, you love
mhm,
your flower vase, that's a part of it. But
mhm,
all those parts of it all combined over the all history of the world don't even come even close to what
mhm,
it actually is. So
mhm,
I call the divine because it's God, because it's
mhm,
easy. But in my heart, it's the beloved.
mhm,
It's the ineffable beloved, the unspeakable beloved, and
mhm,
it is truth and knowledge and all life and my breath and all beauty and everything else too. It's also all the suffering. It's everything. This people are like, if God really loved us, people wouldn't die. But this whole universe is made out of consumption. Everything here,
Circle of life. It's everything.
it is. It's everything. It's the way it is here. And if you didn't have that, it would be heaven. It wouldn't be here. And so God is everything there is, and nothing that you can conceive of, inside of everything and beyond everything. It is the ground of my being. It is the source of all life. It's the unmanifest. It's unspeakable. It's the beloved.
Oh yeah, the creator. It's just, it's a tough question because a lot of people just think that you should have an easy answer for that, but really it is all encompassing. It's everything. There's just no one direct answer for that. So you made mention that you were just trying to figure out ways to go back. Like this is pretty much what you started existing for, right?
Yeah.
Existing to just go back. And did you obviously you just can't just go back just like that.
Well, you could.
Okay.
There is a way to go.
Right.
And I was told not to when I was on the other side. I was shown not only that I didn't create my own, I did not create my human form. I also didn't create my soul self, my photonic self, my union self. I was a part of this creator, creature, and I was told not to take my own life. And when I was in high school, I tried to kill myself and I failed. And when I got back, that was the first thing that was on my mind. How do I get out of here? I could kill myself, but I knew that I couldn't kill myself. And so I decided that if I couldn't go back, I had to bring it here. And that's what the whole interior journey is all about. That's what all these mystics throughout the history of the world, in every culture, in every language, the real mystics, that's what they're all talking about. You can empty yourself of yourself. Non-attachment is a way to talk about it.
That's a tough one.
Well, there are tools. You can't just snap your fingers and make it happen. It's a process. You can have a mystical experience and have that experience of no self. But when you come back, you can have that through psychedelics. And if you come back, you still got your egoic self. And I still have my egoic self. But the difference is that I've spent 45 years practicing non-attachment. And in my daily life, am I attached? Yeah, people could still hurt me and I feel badly about it. I'm not immune to my humanity. But when I'm in my interior space, when my mind is empty of itself, I'm in union with the presence, and it lives inside me like a radiance. And the more I empty myself, the more space it has to be in me, until now I live in a bubble of heaven. My life isn't perfect by any means. Also, just today there were problems. But the energy body of myself is expansive enough to feel the light in everywhere I go, and it gives me, well, comfort and endurance. And enough of it's come here to me, because I was praying every day for my death until I died again, till the day I died again, which was a great day. But I chose
about that.
Well, it was 20 years or so later. It was 2000. So that was more than that. It was 1980 when I first died, 2015 when I died again. And I was on Cape Cod visiting my parents, and for a week, painting the house for them and doing all the sorts of stuff, doing this stuff. I went out for a run, and at the end of this run, I was like, God, that was a terrible run. It was the worst run I'd had in like 5 years. I was like, what is wrong with me? And so I say, Mom and Dad, I'm going home. Someone had loaned me a sailboat for years. So I had this sailboat that wasn't mine that I got to use. I'm like, Mom, Dad, I'm going home. I'm going sailing tomorrow. So I go home, and I get down to the dock, and it's so foggy, I can't see the boat. I'm like, I can't even sail today. What am I going to do? But I've got a couple of hours off from family life. And so I decided to go to yoga class. So I go to yoga class. I live in a small town on the coast of Maine, and pretty much everybody knows everybody. And so I go to this yoga class. The teacher's a friend of mine. It's summertime, so all these summer people are there. And then there's no room for me because I'm late. So she sets me up in the door jam. So I'm kind of like half in the studio and half in the hallway. and it's hot yoga, partly because it's a hot August day. And I start to, like down in downward dog, and I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
sweating bullets. And I had just started, and I was like, why am I sweating? So I'm like, God, my chest hurts. So I decided to lay down, to all you yoginis and yogis. I lay down in Shavasana. I lay down on my back.
Yeah.
And I put my toes up and I spread my arms out, and I'm lying there on my back, and the teacher comes over and looks at me, and I'm like, it's okay. And I'm sweating, and I'd been a licensed ambulance attendant after I was a ski patrol guy. I worked on ambulances, volunteer. And so I'm like, okay, heart hurts, sweat. Oh, I'm having a heart attack. And I thought, but how bad can it be? I've been running 5 days. I'm super fit. And I eat well. So I'm like, it'll pass, I tell myself. So I get up, and I don't want to disturb the class. So I get up and I go outside, and I sit down in a chair, and I sit in the chair, and I'm like, oh my God, this really hurts. So I lay down on the grass, and I'm lying on the grass, and I'm like, I should get myself to the hospital. So I try to sit up. I can't move. It's too much pain. So I lay back down, and then I realize I really am dying. And I think to myself, today's my day. Who knew? I was going to get up. I was going to get to go home today. And so I'm like, this is pretty great. And it hurts, but it's okay. And the teacher comes out, and she says, are you okay? And I say, no, I'm dying. She's like, you're not dying. What
That's hot. I'm dying. Hot yoga.
Yeah. Right. And I said, no, I'm having a heart attack. She said, you can't be having a heart attack. Look at you. I'm like, no, really, seriously. My grandfather died on my birthday from a heart attack. My sister died, the sister who disappeared, she died of the same thing. So I know that this is in the family. My dad had the same problem, like heart attack family thing. And I get to the urgent care center. Somebody drives me to the urgent care center. I call ahead. I tell them I'm coming. I get in. They give me an X-ray. They're like, you have 100% blockage, and you're widowmaker. And it's an 1.5-hour drive to the catheterization lab. And I'd already, by the time I get to the ambulance to go to the cath lab, I'm outside of my golden hour. And so as I'm on the gurney, and I know the doctor, I know all the nurses, this is small town life. My wife is there. My son is there, and he's in his late 20s. And I'm on the gurney, and I'm rolling away. And he reaches over, and he grabs my hand, and he stops the gurney. And he comes really close to my face, and he says, and looks right in my eyes and says, I love you, Dad. And like the totality of, because I still can see into people. And so I see into his depths, and I see his pain, and I see that he's not ready. And I'm like, but I'm thinking to myself, but I'm going. And so I pull back, we move on, and my wife is next to me, and she looks up at me. She looks down at me, and I look up at her, and I give her a wink, because I've been telling her my whole life, the first chance I get to go, I'm out of here. I'm not going to take my life. I'm going to leave. You need to be prepared for that, because that's my plan. And so they put me in the ambulance, and we're driving down. And I should say that I didn't take any morphine, because morphine makes me sick. And I told the doctor, if you give me morphine, I'm going to be vomiting into my oxygen mask in the back of the ambulance while I'm having a heart attack. That is not a good idea. Not a good idea. So he said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to meditate. And he said, what? I said, yeah, I wasn't saying it as energetically as I am now.
Right.
Meditation on pain is a practice that I've been practicing. And when you meditate on a part of your body, you bring your mind and your breath to the painful part of your body, and you stare at the pain. You don't recede from the pain. You go into the pain. There's a certain level where this doesn't work, but for the most part, you can rise up above the pain, and the pain doesn't hurt anymore. The pain is still there, but you don't feel it. And I've been doing this for 25 years, and so or longer at this point. And so practicing this. So I said, I'm going to meditate. I get in the ambulance. I'm meditating on my pain. As long as I stay in my heart with my mind and my breath, I can endure it. And meditation, you can hear everything that's going on around you. So it's not like it shuts you off from the world. So we're driving down to Portland, summer Sunday, Saturday traffic, bumper to bumper kind of, and the ambulance is the sirens going, and I hear the paramedic radio to the catheterization lab. We're losing him. And I can hear in her voice that she's scared. And so I look up at her, and she's fear on her face as she looks down at me, but she's a professional. So she drops right into her game face.
Mhm.
And as soon as I see her game face, I have too much pain to be outside of my meditation. So I like super, it's like an elephant on tree pose in my chest,
Mhm.
and June jiggling up and down. And so I
Mhm.
dive back inside myself to go into my meditation. But when I go back, I'm not in my body anymore. I go back inside myself and I am outside of my body. And my body is like this cave. And I'm kind of sort of outside this dark cave in this tunnel. And I'm looking at it and I don't have any more pain. And I know where I am this time. And this angelic being comes rushing down toward me. And this time it's speaking to me in this plural. Come to us. We've been waiting for you. It's time for you to come home. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going. And so it comes down next to me this time, and I begin to go with it, kind of parallel to it. I'm not inside of it. Maybe connected to it. And
Mhm.
as I'm going with it in joy, I thought to myself, but my son. So, and then I thought, I should look around. This is so sudden. I should go back and look around to see if everybody's okay before I leave. So I kind
Mhm.
of disengage and I dive back inside myself, but I don't really go into my body. I'm sort of in my mind.
Mhm.
And I see my son and I see that he's not ready for me to leave. I see my daughter, and she had just left a very abusive relationship with a
Mhm.
brand new baby that we rescued out of this circumstance and
Mm.
swept her away from Florida to Maine to keep her safe, and the baby too, 9-month-old. And
Mhm.
as I look at the baby, I see the baby's life in parallel with me and without me. And
Mhm.
with me, she is much better formed
Mhm.
as a human being, more balanced. Without
Mhm.
me, it's disaster. She survives, of course. It's not like she
Mhm.
is, but it's so much better with me. And
Mhm.
so I turn around and I go back out, and this angelic being had receded politely. And as I came back out, it came back to sweep me away with it. And I say to it, if it's all the same to you, I know the length of my life is short. It's brief, but I'm going to go back in because they need me, and I'll see
Mhm.
you around. And I turn around and I went back in again.
Yeah.
And I came to at the doors of the hospital,
Mhm.
where they did catheterization on me, and my life became entirely different again, and it shattered. All of these are shattering experiences
Mhm.
that require decades of integration.
Mhm.
And while I was in the hospital, I'd been working at this point in my career. I'd been working in television for about 15 years at this point, maybe 13.
Mhm.
And I was also working in New York in television, and a bunch of people down there convinced me to write the book about my near-death experience because I had come out of the closet, and
Mhm.
my book came out while I was in the hospital. Came out a month early. Amazon released it,
Mhm.
and then I also, when I'm in the hospital, I told everybody the next morning I had another near-death experience, and my wife and my kids, and my son told me that the doctor told him to say goodbye to me because
Mm.
3 to 5% of people survive widowmaker heart attacks,
Yes.
and nobody survives outside of the golden hour. And so I ended up with lots of damage in my heart, um, which is the price I paid.
Mhm.
And then in the hospital also, the TV station called and told me that a new corporation had purchased the station and that we were being canceled. So it's like a very big couple of days.
No
Um,
kidding. So wow. So the journey changes not just because of another NDE, but you're sort of being pushed into a whole other direction.
yep,
You have to make more big changes now.
which is why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Right. Which is labor
Well,
of love, right?
it is, and I kept this a secret for 20 years, and I came out because when I was a minister, there was this huge embezzlement in in the church I was in, and
Mhm.
I was attacked and blamed. It was terrible. Long,
Mm.
long, very powerful people in the
Mhm.
political and economic world trying to
Mhm.
destroy me. But at the end of all of that, I came out to my congregation, and
Mhm.
that's when I went into television. And so, but I still was hesitant about the whole thing. But after my second near death, I felt
Mhm.
like I was finally ready to be all in.
Mhm.
I can finally actually, I feel like I'm well enough positioned in my life, in my credibility life, in my self-understanding life, that
Mhm.
I can actually start talking about all the parts of near-death experience that I've never talked about,
Mhm.
because I didn't wanna be committed, frankly.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, it's a story that is, to me, says it in the title, right? NDE, to a journey of inspiration and growth. I think that's exactly what it's been. It's just been continued for you. You just seem to be like everything just seems to be opening up. Like you're not supposed to do this. Let's just have a nice easy shift over this way. And people come into your life who are meant to. It's not that we don't have struggles, but I just think when you come back with something like that, because I've nothing as drastic as yours, but a couple of, I've had a couple close calls myself. And I think, you come back and it's going to be either an I don't give a shit attitude or it's going to be an enlightened, like you're either going to throw caution to the wind, jump in to every terrible situation with both feet because you feel invincible, right? Or you're going to come back and be just smart about it and ease your way into it, not with your foot on a banana peel.
But there's plenty of that accidental foot on the banana peel as it is, so
Yeah, no, exactly. All right, we're gonna hold that thought. I have to do a station and sponsor ID. So for those just tuning in, you are tuning into the Outer Realm with myself, Michelle Desrochers. Our special guest, of course, is Peter Panagore. We're talking about his incredible, not one, but two NDEs and life-changing experiences. The journey is changed for sure. It's like it's incredible, an incredible story. We are broadcasting live, by the way, United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We are fully sponsored, of course, by these amazing people, Folgers Coffee, who have been part of our journey for the last 5 years. We're so grateful for you. Thank you so very much. And Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, and of course, Steve McGinnis. We are thankful for all of you. You're all part of our family. And of course, huge thank you to everybody in chat. You make it that much more interesting. We are also, guys, Roku TV. We are on Rumble and X, guys. I can see your comments. Don't be shy. I know it's fairly new for you guys, but don't be shy. We can see the comments, so just kind of jump in there anytime. So we are back. So from this point on, where do you go from there? I know you had a lot of new things that from the last time you were on that have been happening for you. Where are we at now with everything? Any more new books?
well, there is a new book. It's the old book with 70 new pages and 7 extra chapters, special
Wow.
edition that my publisher paid for production of at no expense to us for 50 copies for the studio, the director, the A-list actor, and the scriptwriter of the
Mhm,
movie we've been working on for the last 3 years. I wrote those chapters, and
mhm,
we're now in active movie development for a feature film. I just got
mhm.
back from 10 days in Pacific Palisades just before the fires, meeting
Ha!
with my producers, and, my producer, who lives in Pacific Palisades,
Yeah.
her home is still there, but the whole town is gone.
Oh, yes.
And so we're having our another meeting tomorrow, a producers meeting tomorrow, and we're still pressing ahead. It's looking great, actually, and the publisher got behind it, and, my film agent, who's made a whole bunch of movies, she's all behind it. I've
Mhm,
got a bunch of people who are it's really
mhm,
the whole point of the movie. So the whole reason why I wrote the book in the first place
mm,
is, because I wanted to help near-death experiencers. I wanted to help people who've had spiritually transformative experiences, and I wanted to help the grieving and the dying have hope.
mhm,
And, when I was in New York and this bunch of people talked me into writing this book in the first place, um, I always knew that the message of the book is love, love, love.
mhm,
And I was on this podcast, Buddha at the Gas Pump. I don't know if you guys know it. And the next day, this woman called me on the phone, and she told me her name and where she lived and what she did. And I
mhm,
vetted her. I Googled her as we were on the phone. I'm like, oh my God, she's movie producer and
No.
casting agent and 23 movies, and
Mhm.
she had a near-death experience like mine. And so we ended up in this year-long conversation about NDE, became friends. And at
Mhm.
the end of this year, she said to me, "So, Peter, who's doing your movie?" I said, I don't know. You?" And she said,
Right.
"Yes, me. And let me get my ex on the phone because he's the big producer." And so
Wow.
so I don't even know this guy. And suddenly I'm in Portland, Maine, in a parking space and on this phone call. And suddenly this big producer's on the phone with me with this other producer. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll take a look at it. Send me the book." You send him the book. He reads the book. He comes back and says, it'll make a magnificent movie, but only act 2 of a movie. A magnificent act 2. Where's act 1 and where's act 3?
Well,
And
that's
so he
yeah.
said, "If you can write act 1 and act 3, if you can write material for 1 and act 3 and give us what we want,
Mhm.
we'll have a magnificent movie." And so I spent the last 3 years doing that under their tutelage.
Mhm.
And when my publisher got only my producers and my editors and me
Mhm.
had seen the writing, and when my publisher got it, he loved it. He wants another book. So when we're going to talk about the next book. Those 7 chapters will be part of the next book, which my
Mhm.
producers hope to make into a sequel or a series.
Nice. Very
And
nice.
so I'm shifting my gears here to
Mm.
creative writing. And the other thing I'm doing is I have a YouTube channel and I do scholarship. So
Mm.
I do comparative Eastern Western mystical literature. And right now I've been working through the Aramaic language Gospels of Jesus, which were kicked
That's a
out of the
tough one.
well, he's mystical Jesus in the Aramaic, and they
Yeah.
were kicked out of the church in the 300s. So there's this whole other. Everybody thinks, oh, the Catholic Church came first, and the Protestants, and
Mhm.
it's not at all the history. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that happened, and
Mhm.
there's this book called the Peshitta, which is an Aramaic. Jesus spoke Aramaic. It's the
Mhm.
Aramaic language Gospels, and in those Gospels, he sounds exactly like a oneness mystical teacher. And so that's what I'm working on there and doing counseling and a bunch of other stuff.
I love it. I think that's really fascinating because we know, that Jesus, through his uncle Joseph of Arimathea, of course, probably did study at the ancient mystery schools in Egypt and so on and so forth. It was believed, when he went kind of missing for a little while and then came back and all just, you know, you know,
All
peeved
full
off
enlightened.
enlightened and just like not non-tolerant of certain actions, right? But it's
Mhm.
believed that he did. He went out and he learned a lot of mystical stuff and a lot of came back not just enlightened, but just full of just so much more knowledge. I think it's I love the whole theory behind all of that. A lot of people are coming forward with that a little bit more and more, and it's just like, well, you know, it definitely would be interesting. Of course, you don't know till you get there and ask, you know?
Right.
So, it's funny, Aramaic, 'cause it is a language I think that is still spoken today as well,
It
isn't it?
it sure
In
is.
in the eastern
Mhm,
regions?
mhm.
Right.
And
Yeah.
just I read just yesterday in the papers, which scholars have known this for a long time. It just made the news.
Mm.
Jesus's name was never Jesus,
No.
ever,
No.
never. Not his mama didn't call him Jesus.
No.
The closest is Joshua, is in
Mhm.
translation, but his name was Yeshua.
That's right. Yes.
And yeah.
Yeah. It's oh, there's just so much, I think, wrong with the academic part of all of this. I think it'd be a fantastic story to tell. And I'm glad that you're delving into it because I think you're just a perfect person to do it because you're just really laid back about all of it as well, and you just look at it from the perspective of having been off yonder. you know, I think it's great. So, um, how is I mean your son now, young
He's
man?
great. He's got a new baby. Born premature
Baby.
this summer, but doing great, 18 pounds today.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're
Mm,
doing great, and, he's got a fabulous wife, and they
mhm,
got a business going, and they're all
mhm.
doing well, and
So you made the right decision.
I totally did because
Yes.
right shortly thereafter,
Mhm.
our daughter came to live with us for 3 years. And
Yes.
so the child, who's now 9, I became what my family called me the golden bantha, because I was the best friend, most beloved by her. And
Oh,
so I was her play buddy for 3 years
yeah.
till they moved to their own apartment, and then now they're in
Mhm.
their own place with a wonderful guy
Yeah.
who's, the best stepdad there ever was. And
Oh,
so and they don't live far away from us. Our son lives pretty far. Our daughter we live on an island nearby us. We live on
very
the coast.
nice.
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
very nice. Yeah, that's great. So do you still get those urges of wanting to go back or trying to go back, or have you come to peace with the fact that, you know what? I'll get there when I get there.
Well, I made a promise to my granddaughter that I would stay as long as I could, as long as I had to stay to be there for her.
Mhm.
And so do I still get the urges? Yeah, sometimes I'm like, "Oh,
Mhm.
this effing world," you know? It's like, time
It's
to go
busy.
home. Did you ever watch the Tweedle Faddle Twaddle Twum when you were in
No.
your so, all right, so there
No.
was this cartoon called Mr. Peabody and his boy Sherman, and Mr. Peabody was this dog,
Yes.
and Sherman was his boy, and they had a time machine, and whenever they wanted to leave, they'd say this, like, Yiddish incantation, "Tweedle
Right.
faddle twaddle twum,
Yes.
time for this one to go home," and so that comes into my head, like, I just want out of here, but
It's
then
not getting any easier, is it?
not getting any easier, but so
Yeah.
there's a counterbalance for it for me, though. What I
Mhm.
found is that I couldn't really integrate into the world. I couldn't pretend that I was what I was before. And
Mhm.
and I didn't fit in the world, but I found that the more I leaned into my interior life, the more integrated I became on my inside with my original self, my
Mhm.
higher self, the more integrated I came into the world, and that expansion of the heaven within me makes it tolerable here for me.
Mhm.
I'm after my second near death experience, I uh, I committed to sticking around, uh,
Mhm.
as long as I need to, even though sometimes, I still get homesick.
Mhm. That's a hard one. I think it's one of those things, spoke about this earlier tonight, of feeling this void that some of us feel coming to this time, this place that we've all agreed to come to, and just knowing you've left things behind, you've left people behind, and, of course, if you don't have a near-death experience, you don't even get a hint at that, you just feel that emptiness. So I can't imagine after seeing it all and experiencing it all, and then having that opportunity to go back, and it's like, no. So do you find, like, that void feeling at all anymore? Or do you find that, if you feel pretty fulfilled knowing, like, you have the answers, basically, when you go, your answers are in place, right?
Well, I never had the void feeling. From
Oh,
the moment I
I
came
did
back.
as a child, I did, yeah.
Well,
Mhm,
yeah, before
always.
I died,
Yeah,
but afterwards, no, it wasn't
yeah.
void, it was longing. I was
Longings.
I was
Mhm.
I was
Yeah,
longing. I have this longing,
yeah.
for f all with all of the heaven that I experience here now, in the
Mhm,
now, it's
mhm.
still only a drop in the ocean compared to what it is on the other side. And it
Yeah.
was and it funny thing I discovered in my life is
Mhm,
that the longing that drove me inside is the thing that saved me. It was because I had this longing and this
mhm,
desperation for reconnection, or
mhm,
I was afraid that the connection would fail too,
mhm,
because I didn't know. Um,
mhm.
and no one to talk to about it, couldn't Google it.
Yeah.
And I found that it, the light itself is the solace I find here. And whenever I find myself feeling emotionally upset or lonesome,
Mhm,
I go inside where I know I'm always me. I'm
mhm,
always connected. I'm always in the light. And
mhm,
so I understand the emptiness of not knowing,
mhm.
but I don't have that experience. I mean, I had that, but I haven't in
Yeah,
45 years.
yeah, you're very fortunate. Yeah.
Well,
So
there's a flip side, Michelle. The flip
oh, yeah.
side is the isolation from every person that you know. Every person that I know, I'm walking through the world, and I see light inside and I see inside of people, and
Mhm.
nobody around me could do that.
Mhm.
And if I talked about it, people freaked out about it. And
Mhm.
so I had to closet myself, back before it was acceptable to be open and gay.
Mhm.
All gay people, lesbians, transsexuals,
Mhm.
all lived in the closet because they
Mhm.
had to. But the
Mhm.
closet is a dark and distorting space.
Mhm.
And so I was alone in isolation, and it was torturous for me
Mhm.
to be so. I had to mask myself every day. I masked
Mhm.
myself all the time
Mhm.
because I couldn't show my true self. So that part of it was kinda empty.
Mhm. Mhm. But eventually you were able to come out and
Yeah.
yeah, and be whole
Yeah, exactly.
again.
And
Yes.
true and honest and authentic and real and
Mhm.
not pretending anymore, just as this is who I am.
And
Um,
as it should be, you can't go through something like that and you just wanna scream it for the rooftops, but you're right. I think it came from a time where people would not understand. I think people understand a lot more now. There's such a healthy interest, probably, obviously because of the internet and more enlightening even documentaries or TV shows that talk about it. And I think the fact that you're helping people who have had NDEs also goes to show you that people are willing to take that help. You're offering that place where they can go and they can open up about it. Because even though we're in this day and age of being very open minded, it's still surprising how many people out there just won't go there. And people are just afraid to go public with something like that.
yeah, I came out because I wanted other people to come out.
Hmm.
And there's 10 to 20 million of us in the United States alone, let
Wow.
alone the rest of the world. And
Yes.
cardiac care in particular is bringing
Hmm.
back people all the time, every day. And
Wow.
so there's this growing, and this medical care expands and improves. More and more
Hmm.
people are being brought back from the dead.
Hmm.
And so, when I came out 10 years ago now, publicly in the book, I had come out in my community and a
Hmm.
little bit on television. I kind of played around with it. I wasn't
Hmm.
very public about it, but a little bit.
Hmm.
But my town knew all about it, and my family did.
Hmm.
But when I came out with the book, I was really hoping that I would help open the door for that. And
Hmm.
so the more the people are interviewed, the more movies are made, the more books that are written, the more
Hmm.
magazine articles, the
Hmm.
easier it is to talk about, because science, and I love science. I read science
Mhm,
every day. All sorts of I like astronomy in particular and
mhm,
physics. Um, but science represses it, religion represses it,
mhm.
society represses it.
Yes.
And so there's been, three major big stones keeping us down. Uh,
And why do you think that is? Sorry, what why?
well, I think I have reasons. I think that the religion used to be about revelation and spirituality, but then along came the age of enlightenment and
Mhm,
the age of reason. And the age of reason actually infiltrated church thinking, and they cast out mysticism. There's still
yes.
mysticism in Eastern Orthodoxy. There are
Oh,
definitely doctrines and dogmas, but there's a ton more mysticism over there than there is in Protestantism in the West,
yes.
because religion became fearful of science.
Mhm,
The Scopes monkey trial is an example of that in the United States.
mhm,
And meanwhile, science, kicked out religion. Science became evidentiary based
mhm,
and didn't believe in this bullshit anymore. And religion became fearful of it. And they became so fearful of it that they used the same tools that science and reason was using, but they used them in a closed sphere of only the Bible with
mhm,
no exterior references whatsoever, ever.
mhm.
And so these two, and also in the Bible, it says even the devil can disguise himself as an angel of light. It's in the New Testament, and
Yep,
that scares the shit out of people. And
it
so
does.
and so there's this in the Bible, it says, no, 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 no. And lots of us who have these experiences are mediums. Like, I see dead people.
Mhm,
I don't invite them into my life, but there they are.
mhm,
And
mhm,
that's a no-no. So in society, well, it's if you
mhm.
haven't had the experience, how do you know? And so after my TV show ended, I licked my wounds for a little while and recovered, took a little time off, and meanwhile trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Meanwhile, all these little tiny churches in northern New England started calling me on the phone or emailing me, can you come and preach? So I was traveling around to
Oh.
these churches,
Mhm.
Episcopalians, Methodists,
Mhm.
Pentecostals, Unitarians, Unity, and because they all knew I was an NDEer.
Mhm.
And so I began every single sermon by asking the congregation, raise your hand if you've ever had an after-death communication. And
Mhm.
nobody would. And I'd say,
Mm.
I did. And then half of every single church would raise their hands. Every one of them. Half of them.
Wow.
Everybody, half the people there, they'd all had this after-death communication. I'd say, how many people who raised your hands, was it transformative in your grief? And they all raised their hands. Was it transformative in your grief because now you know your deceased loved one is not dead and they still love you? And everybody raises their hand. I say, how many told somebody? Everybody raises their hand. How many told more than one person? Pretty much nobody. How many ever told about it in church? Nobody. Zero.
Mm.
Because even in the place where it should be safe to talk about this, it was not safe to talk about it.
Mhm.
And if you have an after-death communication, somebody you love dies, and they come to visit you in a dream or in your bedroom when you're
Wow,
standing there.
I can't tell you many about for sure. Yeah.
Right. And now
Yeah.
you know that they're not
Yeah.
dead, and they
Mhm.
often telepathically communicate love or beauty or forgiveness or whatever this thing is that it's always light. They're
Mhm.
always an emissary of God.
Mhm.
And then people's grief changes. They
Mhm.
still miss them, but now they know they're not really gone. And
Mhm.
so there's a woman named Marjorie Woolacott, who's a professor of neuropsychology at the University of Oregon. I think she's retired now, but she did a study on after-death communication, and in her study, 60% of grieving people have after-death communication. 60%. That's half.
Wow.
Who doesn't have grief? By the time you're 70,
Exactly.
everybody. So
Exactly.
half the population after a certain age, more than half, have these after-death communications, and they don't talk about them because A, you can't really communicate this
Mhm.
infinite love, and B, you don't want people to think you're crazy. So
That's a
there's this
big one,
public
yeah.
secret, this open public secret
Mhm.
that we just need to talk about. So
Mhm.
how many people in the comment section have had an after-death visitation?
Mhm.
Um,
Well, yeah, I've come to get to know a lot of these guys, and absolutely very, very, very open group. And Wayne actually had a very different sort of NDE. He talked about it on the show last night, and where he was on the River Styx
oh,
with
wow.
on a boat with all these people, and he had the guy driving, sort of like the big hooded guy, and all this light emanated from him, and he
Wow.
would just they were all going, and as soon as he thought of his kids, it was yeah. So he says, I had my own NDE. So different. I always find it so fascinating to hear the different NDEs. And what, Carol Ann and I were talking about on her show tonight was like how many people have almost like exact NDEs, the tunnel, the light, the loved ones, and the theory, the producer or the owner of the station always says, what if you're just going through the birth canal again and you come out into the light and it's all your family? I'm like, don't even, I don't want to think about that. It's a rude awakening, kind of like out one way and down the chute right out again. And just no. But so when you hear about experiences that are just so vastly different than the norm, not that they're not all significant, because people come back with great stories, but I tend to wonder how much of the experience for many are based on the traditional look for the light in the tunnel, look for your loved ones, because I think 'cause we're just so conditioned to doing it. So when you have something that's so outside the norm, like yourself, you know, it's enlightening to hear that story as well. And, because it doesn't sound like it could be a subconscious thing that we carry with us, because you just always taught about that. Even like growing up, like people have said, no, I grew up Catholic, and when you die, look for the light, the tunnel, the white light, the angels, the loved ones. And so it's just outside the box. Like it's just so very, very different. Wayne's is so very, very different. It's crazy, but I don't know. It's wonderful.
I've read about this person who met Kali, the Hindu god of
Oh,
right. Can you imagine meeting Kali on your way out?
how about no? I'd be good with not. I mean, yeah, you do hear so many stories. The voice of God just shook, everything shook with this, pulled me out of this dark place. And there's some incredible stories out there, I have to say. And I really recommend, like, wholeheartedly, if anybody does have an NDE, do not hold back. Like, what's your best advice for that? You're the guest, you say it.
Find someone you trust and start talking about it. Tell somebody you love, tell somebody you trust. And then be careful when you're talking about it. You don't want to. The problem with it is that you can damage relationships. That people think you're crazy.
Mhm,
So if you get they think you're crazy vibe, just shut up.
mhm,
Otherwise, if there's an opening, if they're interested,
mhm,
definitely talk about it.
mhm,
Because the more you talk about it, the more you're going to be. What happens to me when I'm deep in the storytelling aspect of it is I go back to it.
mhm,
I revisit the place of my death, of when I
mm,
was dead, and the energy becomes present to me.
mm,
And that experience can happen to anyone who tells the story as they enter back into the feelings of it. And so,
mm,
and that brings it more to you. And the more it
mhm,
brings you to you, the stronger it becomes in you, the easier it is to talk about it. And the problem, there's some problems with this though. And the problems are that one can make the mistake that one is the thing itself.
mm,
And when the egoic mind attaches to near-death experience and one's power becomes one's own egoic identity,
mhm,
then it's becomes distorted.
mhm,
The light energy itself is, well, it's the thing itself.
mhm,
And the more you lean into that, the faster you'll grow.
mhm,
So talk about it, dive inside yourself. The International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANDS, IANDS.org,
mhm,
it's where we gather. There's lots of us who are connected to that science-based group because there's other people like us. And
mhm,
so if you go hang out with people like yourself, it's easier to
mhm,
talk about. And at their website, there are IANDS groups in cities all over the world that meet
mhm,
monthly. And so maybe if you're in Chicago or Albuquerque or Orange County, or Boston, you'll
mhm,
find that there are other groups there, and you can find other people like yourself. It's isolating because it's a radical transformation of the recognition that one's consciousness inhabits the body and is not produced by the body, and that the egoic identity is not who you are. Those are
mhm,
major psychological and emotional impacts that change the relationship with everybody else. And
mhm,
so I went through this by myself.
mhm,
And I my only peer group were these old dead people in the ancient literature of East and
mhm.
West.
Yes.
But what I like better than that is other people like me, where I can
Right.
just be myself. And then there's a community of people who can help us integrate,
Mhm.
because it is difficult to get a handle on all that stuff.
Mhm, absolutely. And how can people find you? I've just plastered your website. It's up in the beginning of the show, and we've got it down here again.
Thank you.
So, yes. So they can get a hold of you there. And do you have a link to this other website as well that they can go through,
To what?
to the Near Death
Oh, to IANDS? Oh,
Association? Yeah.
I'll put it up.
Oh,
I'll type it
wonderful,
in the post.
wonderful. Okay, wonderful,
IANDS.org. There it is.
beautiful.
I'll even put it in twice.
And yeah, and I'll put it up on the screen here. So here we go.
IANDS.org. And actually, if you've had a near-death experience,
Mhm,
at their website is information gathered over 45 years of scientific study research that
mhm.
describe the after effects. So if maybe you had maybe you've been kind of weird your whole life and you don't know why, and your mom says, well, I think you died when you were 2 years old or in the birth canal or something.
Yeah, right.
You might not remember your near death experience, And the evidence for near-death experience is often not the medical information that the doctor collects when you're dead through the the wires that are connected to you, but it's the after effects. And there are after effects listed at this website that will help you understand yourself. And that's it's super important to know that the things that you're experiencing, the psychic experiences, the electrical interferences, the extra doses of courage, your fearlessness, all these things, you can find out that they're not unique to you, that they are part of the after effects, and that you have a community of people that you didn't know you had.
Thank you so much. It was so nice to have you join us again and to go through all of this, because I know we had a lot of new people, not just listening, but people in chat. We've got a lot of new people since you've been here, and that's just going to stay with them. I never get tired of hearing it. I know Wayne, this is his third time around. He was all about it. So, and Carol Ann says she'll be thinking about this for days. So I think you definitely left your mark once again. So thank you again. And I'm really hoping when you get this, your other book done and you want to get yourself rolling, you have something you want to talk about, you always have an open door here at the show.
Thank you.
Always welcome.
I love being on your show, Michelle. Frankly, it's been really every single time. It's been wonderful. You're wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. A true pleasure. A true pleasure. And I hope we can do it again.
Peace and love, everyone.
Hey, good night. Well, everyone, we have come to the end of another fantastic show. We've got another crazy week coming up. So Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, we have Beyond the Outer Realm. And we're going to be looking at an uncensored version with Michael Cameron, been on the show before. Super Soldier, Monarch Program, My Lab, whole 9 yards, no holds barred, uncensored show, 2 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. The only place you're going to find that archive will be Rumble, and it will be on X, but it will go live on YouTube and it will go live on Roku after that. The only place you can find it is, again, Rumble and X. Wednesday night, Kevin Dermot O'Doherty, another one of our favorite guests, coming on board, and he's going to be talking about the book, The Secrets of the Egyptian Nag Hammadi, which he has basically talked about before, but this is his interpretation. He's just dissected a lot of it. It was a fantastic show, and we've had the request, so he's going to be back. Thursday, another friend, colleague here at the United Public Radio, Bart Sharp, and he's here. We're going to talk about spirituality, power spots. He does a lot of different tours on Mary Magdalene. Dr. Snick, to Folgers, and to see, and we shall see you guys next week. Behave. Have a great weekend. I want to see you all here.